The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 181, with Curtis Christopherson from RAD Roller, Innovative Fitness, and Reflex Supplements.
It doesn't matter if you're in the manufacturing business, if you're in the personal service business. You can have every system under the book and everything articulated, but if there is no accountability to that system, then the systems are worth nothing.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, and thanks for joining us this week. We're going to switch things up a little bit. We're not going to talk so much golf or performance or fitness this episode. We're actually going to talk about something that I think is going to hit very close to home for a lot of you listening. I know there's a lot of fitness professionals, a lot of trainers, a lot of golf pros, and also just a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs that are listening to this show. And there was a question that came up in our private Facebook group not too long ago, the 18 Strong Movement, regarding how to kind of structure your time, how to build your business, but also structure your time so you're kind of able to manage your life, manage your goals. And I know that many of us want to create more time for the fitness, for the diet, for the ability to play golf. And sometimes it's the business and our aspirations, our goals that really kind of limit our ability to create those time gaps. And so this week we're talking to Curtis Christopherson, who is a serial entrepreneur, super successful businessman. And so the intent here is to help us all figure out how to kind of maximize our time that we have each and every day. Curtis is, like I said, a super successful businessman. He's the owner of Innovative Fitness, which is one of the, if not the largest personal training companies in all of Canada. And we talk about how he recently just kind of acquired the rest of the locations of Innovative Fitness. He's also a partner and owner of Reflex Supplements, which is one of the largest and most successful supplement companies in Canada. And he's also a partner and co-owner of one of our favorite companies, RAD Roller, which is where we originally met Curtis through our good friend Nick Mueller and have really become very good friends with Curtis here. I'd love to read through all of Curtis's accomplishments and everything from his bio, but that would take up another 15 minutes of this episode. But let me just say that Curtis is one of those guys that you're simply inspired by, and you look at in awe and kind of think, how does this guy get so much done? And he's younger than me. He's only in his, I believe, mid-30s. So remember that when you hear him talk about all the accomplishments that he's already had. But specifically in this episode, we're going to talk about how does he fit it all in? How does he prioritize and schedule, and what tools does he use? And what are his, I guess he calls them the 4 big priorities that he focuses on and makes sure that he has at least some semblance of balance around and really kind of looks at those on a regular basis. We talk about his path from being a 19-year-old kid who's, working in a personal training studio and how he used his student loan to buy a house and eventually is now one of the owners of the largest personal training company in Canada. We also discuss his advice to the brand new coach, the brand new trainer that's just kind of starting out. What should they be thinking of? And then also, what does he recommend for that seasoned veteran, the person that's been training or coaching or working with in the service-based industry, might be kind of stuck in the trenches and is looking to grow something bigger now that's outside of just the scope of just you working with clients. So if that sounds like you, this is definitely an episode for you to listen to. And then the importance of having a vision. What is it that you want to create, and how are you going to get there from there? And then also we're going to discuss his explanation of how to go from what he calls startup mode to established mode. So once you do decide to build this system, build this business, what are you going to do from going from an individual that's just kind of starting to what an established business would look like? So there's so much information in this episode. I'm really excited for you guys to hear Curtis's story and hopefully take some pieces of this and implement it into your own life, your own business, your own goals, whatever that might be. All right, here's Curtis Christopherson.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot more time, obviously, at head office and driving around. So it's all good, though.
Nice. And how's that whole process been going? When did the whole transition happen?
December 29th. So basically, but it wasn't announced for probably a month. It's been in the works since September, I'd say. So I can't remember. I mean, we can even talk about it on the podcast, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So basically, I've been, as you might remember, I've been with Innovative for 16 years. I was like one of the OGs, and then what happened is that I opened up the facility I owned was our third location. So the two co-founders owned one each. I owned White Rock, so there was the three of us, and then I came back corporately and was a partner, and grew that from 3 to 10.
Right.
And then 5 years ago, I left that our agreement arrangement, and I just focused on our White Rock facility because I had RAD Roller and other things going on. And then full circle, I just came back and purchased the whole enchilada. So yeah, it's good. It's busy.
But so yeah, what kind of started the whole idea of transitioning into taking over all of IF? How did that kind of progress?
Well, I think being involved in the business for so long, I mean, like I said, I've been with Innovative Fitness for the last 16 years, and then, fell in love with our culture. I helped create it, obviously, and grow and expand it to what it is today. And then based on, the demands I had at home, having the kids and other things going on, I took a step back 5 years ago, and then I realized that it was time. I'm a big fan of progressing when you're ready to, and I think both maturity, business maturity, where I was in my life with my wife and my kids and everything else, it was kind of time to take that next step. And then, coincidentally, at the same time, the two partners at Innovative Fitness that I was working with or working alongside, they had kind of touched base with me over the last couple of years to see if I had any interest of coming back on. And then, the world, things collided, and for the better, that is. And I managed to have the conversation and decide to take that next step. So yeah, it was great.
So before this new step, what were kind of your roles with RAD Roller, with Reflex, and then also with the location that you had with IF? So kind of what were you doing, day-to-day kind of things for each of these? And then, let's just go ahead and take over all of IF.
Well, till now, obviously, for the last 13 years, I owned and operated our largest facility, which we have 22 full-time training coaches. We do about 650 billable hours in a week. So that's, our training facility out of the White Rock South Surrey area. And, when you have 22 full-time coaches training from 6 a.m. in the morning till, 9 o'clock at night and 6 days a week, I mean, it's definitely, there is demands, but I've been able to empower, the right people and competent people to not only do the training jobs, and facilitate the training sessions, but also obviously management, administrative, and all the marketing support that we need. So, that's been great. I'm heavily still involved on a day-to-day level with that business, just based on the fact that, you got to, connect and treat your people right, but you also have to connect and be a presence for the client or the customer. So, my day-to-day involvement with that was more around those types of things. How could I provide great leadership, ensure that the culture is thriving, provide opportunity, and have the conversations both with, our teammates and clients on a day-to-day with RAD. So, just to rewind, 3 years ago, we did a merger. Myself, my partner Kevin Hendry, that created a product, did a merger with RAD. Became partners in that business, and my job and responsibility as VP of RAD Roller was to help oversee, obviously, the operations. We were a small team 2.5, 3 years ago. So help oversee some of the operations, particularly in the sales aspect of things. I was overseeing all the sales in Canada, some of the sales and strategic partners in the U.S., attended several of the trade shows, but more importantly on the health and fitness side. So, the Perform Better Summits, any of the larger health influencers, I was the one that was the liaison with them, and any of our larger accounts. So New York Rangers, Toronto Blue Jays, Miami Heat, those conversations usually fell on my plate, and it was just based on my health and fitness experience and background. And then 2.5 years ago, I had a good friend of mine own something called Reflex Supplements. At the time, I would say it was one of the largest supplement retail chains in Canada, and he went through some unfortunate challenges with really HR. I mean, he lost the main guy in charge for, based on his decision. Unfortunately, the gentleman, got his hand caught in a cookie jar and was, obviously moved on. And he was stuck in a situation where he had grown the business to the 9 locations that he had. We ended up closing 2 right soon after, and just needed some more support. So guidance, experience in the franchise business, and what turned in from a conversation over beer turned into weekly conversations. And then he asked me if I wanted to be involved, and I became an owner and a partner in that business 2 years ago. So that business, when we started, had 9 locations. It had been open for 22 years. Had grown, had its peaks and valleys as most businesses do. And, when we got together, we had 9 locations, we closed down 2. And, in the last 2 years, we've grown from the 7 that we had at the time to 25 locations. So we've really reinvented the business model. We're changing, obviously the aspects of retail has changed immensely over the last couple of years. It's you look at any of the major chains, usually accessories or clothing, are closing down faster than they're opening. And unless you're, reinventing yourself to be that boutique service offering, retail's tough, especially in the accessory goods space. The big boy Amazon, nothing's more cheaper and more convenient than them. So, it's been great. So I've been spending a lot of time on that business and kind of finding a balance between all 3. So.
Well, I think that's kind of where the whole conversation about bringing you on the show started. We have in our private Facebook group, we had somebody ask a question. I think it was Sean Keller, and he was referring back to an episode we did with Don Saladino a while ago, talking about just building a business, building a fitness business in particular, and what are the things that you, as a family man, a businessman, somebody who likes to golf, how do we end up fitting all this stuff in? And so, you kind of connected with me, and we thought this would be a great topic. I know it's going to be a little different than a lot of our other shows where we're talking specifically to the golfers about their golf game. I think this may kind of reach the golf fitness professionals, the trainers, the medical professionals, even the golf pros a little bit more. But I'm sure a lot of the listeners are possibly business owners. So I think this is going to be a cool kind of overarching topic that we can cover here is, first of all, how does somebody like you, I listen to, all the things you're doing, all these different businesses, reading through your bio, which I have to say is incredible to just kind of see the different business accomplishments, the physical accomplishments, some of the other things and I'll kind of list some of those things in the show notes as well. I will introduce them in the beginning of the episode here. But so how do we go about kind of finding, or let me ask you personally, how do you go about kind of finding all of the time in the day? We all only have the same 24 hours to fit what you want to get in the day, all the responsibilities that you have for these different positions, and what advice do you have for somebody who's trying to build a business or trying to really scale back what they're doing on a daily basis that maybe they feel overwhelmed? How do you do that?
Well, that's a loaded question.
We have about 30 more minutes that you can answer it on.
I think the biggest thing is that, just as a disclaimer, everybody's goals and ambitions are different. So, I've seen and witnessed, including my own staff, that some guys want to be, or girls, I should say. So some individuals want to, be that independent service provider. They don't want to be the entrepreneur. They don't want to take the risks. And there is nothing wrong with that. And it's same goes with our life. Some people want to be married and some people want to have kids and some people don't. So I think, we have to ensure that people and recognize that people have different ambitions, different goals, and they have, different expectations of themselves. So, that being said, in my scenario, and what I've told everybody that I've worked alongside or worked with is that from my belief and my experience, I believe that if someone wants to be an entrepreneur and run their own business, and like I said, whether that's independent training business, coaching business, and or anything for that matter, I think it's timing. You have to, as much as we all want to have a 5-year vision and 5-year plan, it's pretty hard to predict what the next 5 years look like in life when you're 25, 30 years old or 35 years old. So, I've always encouraged people to think about 4 big elements in life that people might consider is obviously, getting into a relationship. I think having a family is a significant step in life. Establishing your career, whatever that looks like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, or if you want to be that independent service provider. And then obviously establishing a home. I think those 4 things take a lot of time and a lot of focus and a lot of financial commitment. And my big belief is, as much as you can do it all at once, there's a lot of times people want to do them all at once, or coincidentally fall into the trap of doing them all at once. And it just makes life that much more difficult. And let me rewind and explain my experience and what my path and my journey. I graduated from SFU, Simon Fraser University, with a kinesiology degree. Have worked the entire time through my university program, and when I came out, as much as I was in a serious relationship, I bought a house with a girl, and everything went great for a period of time. I realized that at that age, at 22, 23 years old, I wanted to focus my career and establish myself. So, I put my head down and did exactly that. I made my first financial commitment and took risk at 23 years old. It was a $500,000 commitment to open up my own facility, 0 backing by the banks. And, I had to put my head down and focus on establishing that. And I told myself that was going to take a period of time, whether it's 3 years or 5 years. It was going to take a period of focus, time, attention to really establish what I wanted. And once I got to a level of being comfortable and established, then I could focus my attention on something else. So my big belief is, life is a bunch of layers. And if you can time those layers, in a good fashion or in a timely manner, you're going to reduce the chances of being overwhelmed, reduce the chances of failure, and so that's what I did. I took that commitment. I focused on the business. Then when I was ready to be in a relationship again, I randomly, coincidentally, it's almost like the universe told you, because when you're ready and you're looking for a relationship, that's when it happened. And so I got into a serious relationship, and that's, my wife today. And, and just before we had our kids, we told ourselves, let's enjoy this relationship and spend time flourishing that before we jump in to have kids all at once and establish a home. So, then we did that. We took the next step and we established our home. We built that and then we, had kids after that. And then I spent the last 3 years with my kids and realized, okay, everything's comfortable, everything's settled. It's time to take that next step. So I think when you time things like that, it increases your chances of success. And some things we don't have control over. Randomly we might have, have kids, or, something negative might happen in our life, or some challenge that might happen in our life that we have 0 control over, a car accident, or, a death in the family, or something that we have no control. But when we have control over some things, focusing on our career, taking risks, being in relationships, having kids to a degree, I would suggest people, think about that. Don't try to do it all at once. Really layer it on, get good at something, and then layer on the next step. And I think when you can do that, you reduce it. So reduce the chance of failure anyways. So that would be my first piece of advice. And that's, once again, based on my experience.
All right. So I want to kind of go back a little step here to when you were talking about, being 22 years old and making the decision to dive in, put your head down and just kind of grind it out. So you said you raised the $500,000 without the bank's help, and that was to build a training facility, is what I understand. So what made you kind of make that decision as a young man? Because I know at the age of 20, 22, those were not my thoughts. Obviously kind of finishing up college and going into grad school on my end, but still was not nearly in a position of looking that far ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think I've always been a striver for, more, and I guess that'd be a risk taker, naturally. And, in life, I played on the national water polo team since I was 16 years old, and did that until I was 22. And during that time, I always strived for more. So when I was 18 years old, and I had just graduated from high school and had got scholarships for university for sport and education. And I was working full time. So when I was working full time, I could qualify for a student loan and a student credit card, actually. And that student loan, even though I didn't need it, I actually got a student loan for $15,000 and I bought a house with it. So I put it on a down payment of a house. So when I was 19 years old, I owned this house that my brother and two of my friends rented off me while I was going to university and living at home with my parents. And I think, those type of decisions set myself up for success down the road. And, similarly, during university, I worked the entire time. I managed a sports complex. I had 90 lifeguards underneath me. I had 10 administrative individuals, and then a team in the weight room. So there was about 120 staff, and I was 21 doing it. I think it taught me a lot. I mean, I think I knew more than what I actually did. I was naive to understanding how to, run a business and manage people. But, those kinds of decisions and commitment, I think gave me a perspective of being comfortable with taking risks. And then, when I was 22, I said to myself, when the opportunity came along, I said, might as well do it now. I'm young enough that I can, if everything went bad and it was worst case scenario, what would that look like? Well, obviously making a $500,000 commitment would be negative $500,000. And I said to myself, I know great people, I can work hard. And if I did fail at some level, I would have a runway of time to make up for that. And, I made the plunge then. And I think the reality is I would never turn back the hands of time. I know that I was, probably relatively young for many people to make that kind of commitment, but, now it's paid dividends. So yeah, I mean, I think that's part and parcel why I made that step.
Yeah, it's interesting, being on the national team and doing all these things from a younger age. It kind of seems like you got the reps, you kind of got some of that experience. And then also you had just that drive inside you that it seems like you were able to kind of figure some of this stuff out at a bit of a younger age, or were willing to take that risk and plunge in at that younger age and just continue to build on that. Regarding, the whole business idea, so you and I, when we first started talking, we mentioned that there's a lot of fitness professionals that are out there, a lot of golf pros, a lot of medical professionals that are trying to build a business. But a lot of times their business is revolved around them as the fitness professional themselves. And so obviously when we talk to a guy like you and we see, man, you've got these locations, you got 3 different businesses kind of in 3 different markets almost, or 3 different types of business. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, how does somebody like that figure out how to do that when I'm just trying to work with my clients and build a business, and I'm kind of stuck in the trenches a little bit. And I feel this myself. Obviously we've got 18 Strong as a platform on the internet. We've got the podcast, but day to day, I'm still working with clients, working individually, and we've only got so much time in the day. What do you suggest, or what would your words of wisdom be to somebody that's thinking like, man, how do I break away from just this working individually with a golfer or a client or a patient to actually building a business that they can, again, start to fit in the rest of those pieces, the relationships, the family, the career, the home, and tie all that stuff together?
We just talked about risk and taking risk in business and taking that step to be an entrepreneur as an example. I think you have to take a similar type of risk to realize it's not about yourself, and that risk is having the trust and confidence that you would be able to empower someone else to do a similar or same level of job as what you would do for that client as an example. And I think, it's having that confidence and taking that risk of, and trust in finding those right individuals and empowering them to do either equally as good of job as what you're doing or a better job even, and I think when people make that choice and realize that, hey, you know what, I got into business because I want to manage and run a business. I didn't get into business because I want to be an independent service provider. I think they're 2 different things. When I was a training coach and a personal trainer, strictly with my own clients, my learning and education was strictly on how to be a better trainer.
Mm-hmm.
But then it shifted. When I became an entrepreneur, it had to shift. I think you still have to, you have to stay relevant. I think you have to stay up to date with your certifications and your education, because if you're going to empower a team, especially in the health and fitness space, you have to know what you're talking about. But your education then has to be about how to run a successful business and how to lead the right group of people. And I think that's the only way that you're going to be able to scale. If you want to get out of the day-to-day, then you have to have the right people around you to pick up those pieces. And that's everything from administrative pieces all the way to, training the clients. And then then you have to become a master of actually leading a team of people. So instead of leading a client one-on-one, you're leading, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 trainers that are leading their clients. And if you trust that process, I think the reality is that that's when you're going to win long-term. You're going to position yourself so that you're not dependent on the day-to-day. You can go on vacation with your family for 2-3 weeks and revenue still comes in, services are still provided. And I think also, as much as I might have a focus on the best experience possible and a level of excellence that maybe many people don't have, I think you have to be okay with 90%. Like, you have to be okay with 90%. You have to be okay with giving up the keys and giving up the reins for people to do it their way. This business is a very, especially the training business, is very creative. I mean, there's different approaches, there's different philosophies, there's different education out there, and not one way is the right way. You look at guys like Charlie Weingroff. He's a culmination of a bunch of unique individuals and philosophies and experiences, and it's like a puzzle. And the reality is if you can provide that approach and understand that there's not one right way, and you can give a level of freedom and flexibility and realize that it's not your way or the highway, I think you're going to empower more people and you're going to be able to grow a lot faster, in my opinion.
I think that's kind of a daunting thing when somebody's jumping from being an individual sole practitioner to then building a company. Is how do I take what I know and let this person do it? And I think this is in all realms. It's not just the fitness piece. It's, like for the website stuff, like graphic designs or whatever, maybe you're a music artist, whatever it might be. It's how do I give away that freedom for that person that I'm kind of starting to delegate to do it their way, but still kind of keep it my way? How do you go about like building that system? Because I know one of the quotes that I pulled out of the Facebook message that you put was you want to go from startup mode to established mode as quickly as possible. And I assume that's just a matter of figuring out how to put in systems and processes. And so what advice would you give when it comes to, okay, so let's take an example. So let's look at the younger practitioner, the younger golf fitness professional or fitness professional, and they are kind of at the start of their career, and they're starting to think like, okay, they're starting to get that piece. Like, I can't do this for 40 years. I got to build this bigger than me. What would you say that their kind of first steps would be to becoming an entrepreneur, not just a solo practitioner?
I think the first step is to clearly set out the vision, and articulate it. If people don't have a purpose, and you can't articulate where things are going or what that is, I think that sets the foundation. So that'd be number one. I think setting that with the vision, you have to set the culture, and the culture is usually created through establishing core values, and an environment that is welcoming, so that you can foster and grow relationships. And when I say grow relationships, not only with the client, but with obviously future teammates. And then the next step is creating the system. Like what you said, I mean, this business, whether you're a golf professional or just a training coach or a personal trainer, at the end of the day, it's a personal service. And the personal service business, any business that revolves around the delivery of human capital, the reality is that it's a very hard thing to systemize. And so what you have to do is you have to think about everything that goes on, on a day-to-day basis, how you interact with the client, and how you can, somewhat systemize that process and then teach that process. So what we found that works is that when we come up with obstacles or challenges, or someone leaves for a certain reason, or there's negative feedback or constructive feedback in the business, we ask ourselves, how could we have approached this better? And how can we create a system around that? How can someone wasn't educated on one level. So whether it was a client, whether it was a trainer, whether it was a business, there was a missing link. And so every single time we have a stumbling block, we ask ourselves, could there be a better system for that? Could we enhance the system, or was there even a system at all? So I think, getting not only yourself, but getting your employees and teammates and coworkers to help create those systems, because we can bang our head as an entrepreneur and a business owner, we can bang our head a gazillion times and getting frustrated that people aren't doing it the way that we expect. Or we can ask ourselves, how are we going to implement a system and teach that system so that at least they're going to hit 90% of it. And going back to what I said before, you have to be satisfied with 90%. No one is going to run the business equally as hard or focused or as diligent as you are if you have skin in the game and any kind of debt or, ownership mentality. Like, it's just a reality. So, what we have to do is we have to systemize the business as much as possible. And then I think the last thing is accountability to the system. You can have all the systems in the world, and it doesn't matter if you're in the manufacturing business, if you're in the, personal service business, you can have every system under the book and everything articulated. But if there is no accountability to that system, then the systems are worth nothing. So I think, the reality is, going back, setting a vision, for your company, and hopefully it aligns with opportunity in the industry that you reside in, and it's clearly articulated. I think setting the culture and through core values, I think that's very important. And with culture, I think, when we talk about core values, you got to hire people that are aligned with those core values. When you go to China, you don't pay with US or Canadian dollars. You pay with yen, Chinese yen. So at the end of the day, I always look at, your culture and your core values. You have to hire people that are using the same type of currency. It just makes sense. If you're going to hire someone because of their skill and their experience, but they're culturally not a fit, it's not going to work. Just a reality. You can teach people to be great trainers in the training, in the training world. You can't teach people to be aligned with your core values. It's just a reality. So hire people that, are synergistically aligned with your core values. Have them help you create the systems if you don't have them already created, and then provide accountability around it. And if you can provide accountability, then people know what to expect, and there's repercussion if obviously they aren't followed. So
let's jump in here real quick to say thanks to our sponsor for this episode, which just happens to be RAD Roller. So Kurt, obviously we have you here on the show, and the people of the 18 Strong community have been hearing about RAD Roller forever, as one of our sponsors, one of our favorite tools that I use here in the gym, but also that we use, just with our community. Give us a little details on, what's the mission of RAD? What's going on with the products? Anything new?
Yeah, RAD Roller is a mobility product company. So we focus on products or produce products that are myofascial release products. Replace your typical foam roller and other products on the market. We definitely stand behind the quality of not only our material, but the design. We have high level health experts that are designing our products, and because of that, we're able to, put forward products that are designed for the body and help people move better. So, and in conjunction with our products, we have an educational part of our business as well. So we have educational certifications around mobility and myofascial release. And, those, that supports not only the products, but for health professionals that really haven't been provided a ton of education around the science behind fascia, mobility, release techniques, and how to do it. We have that whole arm and division as well. So,
yeah, I've said it many times on the show that it's not just the products that you guys create. It's not just the tools, but it's also just kind of the emphasis that you have on the education piece, not just for the professionals like ourselves, but also just the end user, and where people can go to the RAD Roller site, they can get information, they can get the YouTube videos on how to use the products. But then if somebody wants to dig in deeper, if they're a medical professional, fitness professional, they can get the certifications. Or you guys also do kind of custom built educational platforms where, you come to a facility or something like that. So if you guys haven't checked out the RAD Roller products, go to radroller.com. Just spend some time on the site, look at all the different products that they have. They've got a whole suite of them. You can check out all of the education pieces. And of course, you can get a sweet discount by using the code 18strong. Yeah, I think being in that whole, service provider arena, and if you're doing it by yourself, like many of us are, having that accountability, having those systems are often the things that are lacking, because, if it's just you kind of know the way that you do it. You know how things are going, and, how you adjust and how you weave. But so you don't necessarily always, and I'm going to speak from my own point of view, I don't always create those systems because it's kind of like, oh, well, it's just me. I can figure this out. But not having those systems, or having those systems and not holding yourself accountable to that, it's basically the same thing. It's like not having a system at all. And it's interesting because, here with 18 Strong, the podcast, the website, myself and Ryan have actually kind of brought Ryan's wife, Kendra, into the mix, because she is so good at, being task oriented and is kind of providing some of these systems and helping us develop these processes for, the podcast and the YouTube content we're going to start putting out and those kind of things. And it's amazing because that's not something that I'm typically very good at. And so we're starting to kind of build those things in. It's like, it's a little uncomfortable it's very uncomfortable to kind of be, held down by like, oh, I got to do this and I got to do this. But it's amazing because you also start to see the things being checked off and ticked off, and so many more things are getting done that would have been, oh, well, I'll get to that next week, or I'll get to that whenever, but you see it kind of looming, and you know that you have to get these things done. So having those systems and processes in place have just been kind of liberating, as well as a little bit frightening throughout the whole thing. But so let's say the fitness professional or golf pro that has a pretty established clientele. They've been working for a while, but again, they're all by themselves. How would you suggest that person today or tomorrow? What are some of the first things that you would have them do to start, now they kind of have that vision that you talked about of creating something maybe a little bit bigger. They want to start to kind of step themselves out of just being the person that's doing all the work, all the training with the clients. What's the first thing that they can do to start to then build on that vision?
Like what we just talked about, I think building out the systems, like what you've just articulated in your business, I think is important. Obviously, start documenting things, and it's, it's a lot of work. You can't, if you're training 8 hours a day or working with people every single day, every single hour of every single day, and then you finish your day, not only do you have reporting, but, and follow up and, all the things that, contribute to a great service experience, but then you have to, put pen on paper and build the business system.
Yeah.
So I think some of it, obviously, if you can do it before you start your business, it's great. But I think a lot of the learning experiences can happen during of what you need to articulate. I think hiring complementary people, I think that is one of your first steps as whether you're an HR or you're a business owner. What we typically do is hire people like ourselves. And if we hire people like ourselves, they won't have the skill set and aptitude and characteristics to build out what you don't bring to the table.
Yeah.
So if you are a strong personality type and you have strong interpersonal skills and you can service people, in the golf professional world, as an example, in the training world, you might have great interclient relations and, provide a great service, but you might not be good at the administrative tasks. So the first step is hiring someone that is complementary to you. And that's why partnerships can work very well. I think, no different than relationships, yin and yang, if they work well together and they communicate right, I think, opposites attract. And there's huge strength in that. And I think if your first step is to hire someone unlike you, you're going to cater to a different demographic from a client perspective. People that you might not relate to, they might relate to. So you're going to grow your client base, but they're also going to help you balance out what you don't provide. So I'll use two personality types as an example. If you're an expressive dominant personality type, you're very outgoing and your personality is your strength, you probably are going to be weak on the administrative tasks. It's just a reality. It's not in your genes or in your characteristics to be strong in that. And so conversely, an administratively focused person isn't going to be the person that's going to be the loudest person in the room. So I create that, community and environment that is overly welcoming. It's just a reality. They're maybe a little more timid or introverted. And so, we have to balance each other out that way. And so, whatever personality type you are, I would say the first step is hire someone that's not like you. We naturally are attracted to people like ourselves. And so we have to recognize, where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and who we need to fill the next seat in the bus. And that's got to be someone different than yourself. I think that would be the first thing. And then from there is growing a team that have different characteristics, and once you do that, you're going to find that you're going to round out your experience, your service experience, your business. You're going to have the skills and aptitude and experience probably to, round out things that you can't do or focus on or aren't interested in focus on. And you're only going to get better and bigger. So I think that would be my first large suggestion outside of the vision and the culture.
Just out of curiosity, talking about different personality types and everything, what would you say are kind of your superpowers that you bring to the table when it comes to the businesses and things that, you're able to kind of move and push forward on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I would say it's my strengths lie in driving the business forward. So creating that vision, establishing that culture, leading people. I would say that one of my biggest strengths and superpowers would be connecting people. I think I'm a very good connector. I think the areas of weakness would be, around creating the structure and the systems to a degree. I mean, I think when you have, when you are an owner, there is a little bit of accountability that, if you want to be great, you have to round out your skills. But I would say that wouldn't be a natural skill for me. I went to university and it was funny how you get a daytimer or a planner the first day, and I would think that it would be super organized and, write all the notes and highlight it like, every single other person that I saw in my room next to me. And within, the first week it was in the garbage. or I couldn't find it. But, when you take a risk and you have, something on the line, I think it's a lot different. You have to round out those skills and get better at that. But I would say, going back to your question, my superhero or super strength is the ability to connect, communicate, and lead a team, I would say.
Man, I can totally relate to the whole yearning to be the organized kid, the guy that's got labels and tabs and he's got his, I can remember in college, and this is how bad it is, in college, one of my professors like asking me do you know how to keep track of what needs to be done on what date? It was so embarrassing. I didn't even know how to do my homework at that point, or I had gotten so lazy, I should say. I was generally pretty good in school, but just kind of got lazy and just kind of let that go. So how do you keep your days organized? Are you a guy that uses what tools or resources do you kind of rely on? Because you have so much going on. How do you stay on top of everything?
I quickly learned that, and I tell this to all my staff, that there's 3 elements that you need to be great at that we unfortunately don't learn in university at a high level. Goal setting is number 1. The ability to set goals that are realistic and achievable, obviously. Time management, I think that is a skill that you have to be great at. And then communication. I think those 3 things really lay out a great foundation for success in anything. And let me dive into your question after I talked about this. In life, especially people that have been born in a family that promotes sports and athletics or even achievement, scholastic achievement, goal setting is natural to us as kids. We go on a team and we try out to make a team. We practice hard to get more playing time for games. We, participate in games to win, and then we, win games to win tournaments or whatever that might be. And that might go all the way to, getting scholarships when we're graduating high school. So naturally, if you come from, as an example, in a sporting background, goal setting was done for us. Same thing with school. School provides a level of goal setting naturally. We go to school to learn. We learn to, we're held accountable by our grades, and grades are obviously given to show you the level of progress. And then when you finish school, you're hopefully getting good grades to go on and possibly post-secondary education or whatever that looks like. So, but the minute that school stops and the minute sports stop, people don't know how to set goals.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. Maybe physically, maybe educationally, but I find that people come into their career, they're finished university, and they're like, now what? And that's why I think some people go back to school for the sake of going to school, because they don't know any different. When they're done sports and school, if you ask someone, hey, do you plan for, like, in terms of goal set, for other aspects of your life, your relationship, your family, your career, your social, spiritual, intellectual, emotional well-being? Do you have goals for those? And a lot of people would be looking at you going, I haven't even thought about that. Yeah. So I think goal setting plays a big part in the success of life, because if you're not setting goals in your home environment, whether it's with your relationship, with your kids, let alone for yourself, I think naturally we'll set goals, especially in this industry, naturally physically, but are we setting goals socially, spiritually, intellectual, emotionally, career-wise, and doing a good job with that? Second thing is time management. There's a day timer called Quo Vadis, and it became my staple in planning my every hour of every day of every week. And, I became very good at that, at utilizing that written, your written day timer or planner. And I found that I create a system for myself. You talk about systems. I mean, every Thursday I would look ahead, I would plan my week ahead, and I would plan not just for the clients I was servicing, but I'm planning for meetings, to-dos, task lists. I was planning downtime. I was blocking off downtime, where that downtime might have been my own physical goals or training, all the way to downtime so that I could, have a break of time where I might be, relaxing or enjoying reading a book or whatever that might be. I think people they don't plan for downtime, and they don't plan for planning time. I would plan for planning time. I would sit down and I would plan for that. So I think time management is really key, and how you manage your time is really up to you. I think there's something to be said about, written communication or day timer / planner. I've gone digitally now. I use Google Calendar. I think it's very effective. I think I would say that, my task management suffers a little bit when it's not written. So I still use a notebook to write all my tasks down. But from a day-to-day time management, Google Calendar is what I use and how I plan my weeks ahead. And then communication. I think it's really important that people establish the level of, a strong level of communication. And nowadays, especially the generations coming up, they don't know how to communicate. A lot of their communication is done on text, done through social media. So even having the ability to master the skill of communication face-to-face, I think can play dividends in terms of people's success. So those three things, goal setting, time management, communication, actually, and financial planning / accountability, I think are four things that aren't readily taught in the school and educational system that I think people need to learn quite quickly out of school. And then going back to your question, I know I'm going full circle here, is how I plan my time and energy. Well, I talked about some of those things. I mean, I spend every Thursday, I have an hour minimum to plan my week ahead. A lot of my appointments and meetings have already been set up. Because usually it takes, generally speaking, I have to plan meetings 2 weeks in advance, but I look at my gaps, my downtime, I look at my requirements, I look at, what days I'm out for dinner, what days I'm at home. And I communicate that with my wife. I say, hey, you know what, Monday, Thursday, Friday, I'm out for dinner, or I have to go out X, Y, and Z. And so we put the communication strategy in place so that when I look on Thursday and I advise her on Thursday or Friday about what's going on, she can expect when I can be home and when I'm not. And it also allows us to plan for our, our meals, our dinners, so that on Sunday we can spend the time obviously going and prepping our meals and our meals for the week and for the family. And so, all those things. So my Thursdays, I plan a week ahead. Every November, myself and my wife go away for a weekend. So we spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday, no technology, just the two of us away from the kids. And we plan our year in advance. I think so many entrepreneurs, they plan what they want to do for the month, for the year, for, physically, business wise, and they don't involve their partner. I think the reality is that not everybody are natural goal setters. And I think, it's a big focus of ours is to get away for 3 days, remove technology, connect away from the kids, and spend time with opening up our calendars and setting goals for ourselves. And those goals are our own physical goals, our own business goals, family goals, but also our joint goals, and what are those things that we're going to do together? Not everything has to be done together. What are some things that we want to do individually, and what are some things that we want to do as a family unit, and what are some things that we want to do, together as a couple? So I think those strategies in place are, help us. And we put together a personal development plan or a personal plan for the year. And those include all those goals, all those timelines associated with those goals. And I share those with all my businesses and my teammates in my businesses so that they're aware of what I'm focused on. And also I include them part of the process. So, it's an expectation of my businesses that they set their own personal plans and they set their own goals. So I understand what they're focused on. It really, going back to the initial part of this interview and podcast, I talk about, the home, the relationship, the family, and the career. When you have insight what your teammates are doing and or your spouse, you really get a grasp of what they're focused on. So when to push and when to pull. What their focus is on. If their focus is on their career or if it's on their relationship, there's two different things. So as long as people are progressing in life, Oprah says this, as long as you're progressing in life, you're happy. But progression does not mean that you have to progress in all aspects of your life at once. Yeah. It just means minimum one aspect of your life you have to be progressing. So if I have teammates that are focused on getting married and really taking their relationship to the next level, my expectation isn't that they're going to be unhappy if they don't progress in their career. Obviously, there's some that want to do both at the same time, but once again, as long as people are progressing, they're happy, and I want to have a inclination or an insight of how they want to progress, and then I know how to push and pull and empower them or support them even. So
that's awesome. I love the way that you include everybody, family, business, friends in that whole process. I think that's so important, and I think that had I had this interview or heard this stuff, maybe 5-10 years ago, I would have been like, what do you mean set goals for your family life and all this other stuff? But that's made such a huge difference for me and my life, my wife, my kids, everything, because we're all so busy these days, and it's a challenge to keep it all together. And really that's the basis of the whole conversation that started this podcast, and figuring out how to put those pieces into place so you're not just running all over the place crazily. And I admittedly am a guy who never was great at like laying out my time and scheduling. It's still something that I struggle with, but I've come to find, I use a planner every day and and even that can be a struggle at times to lay out those moments. But I find that when I do lay that out, and I think that some people will agree with this, they feel like, well, having every minute of your day laid out and organized, that just sounds boring. It sounds so restrictive, but really when you do it, I think it's more freeing because, like you said, you're planning downtime, where on a day where I wouldn't plan anything, I'd find myself just, wasting time on mindless tasks because I didn't know I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to get these things done. So there's something to that. When you're busier, you get more done, but I think it's because like I've only got these short blocks of time here. So before we kind of finish up with our last minute questions here, Curtis, just want to know, do you have any books or resources that you would recommend to the listeners to kind of help kind of spur them on to this path of, whatever it is, creating more time or having a little more structure, or even just kind of finding that vision of what they want to create?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan. I read a lot. Miracle Morning is a great is a great book. I love it because if people don't have consistency or, have morning rituals or rituals in their life, how can you structure that and plan that? I think, The Miracle Morning is a great book. I think Moneyball, as much as many people have probably seen the movie, I think Moneyball was a big eye opener, or reminder, I should say, that it reminded you that you don't have to have A players everywhere. You don't have to get the guy that, has the ego, and I shouldn't say ego in a negative way, but, is the strongest, aesthetically the best looking guy and the, what you think is the A player from a training perspective. If you're going to build a training team, you don't need that. You need a bunch of B plus moldable and skilled individuals. And if you look at the live example right now of the Las Vegas Knights, it is no better example than the book and the philosophy around Moneyball. Like, an expansion team, I think it's quite coincidental that it was in Vegas because, they know, we all know that they're all about their statistics and analytics. But they have a bunch of unbelievable B players, no A-listers, and no one's ever seen an expansion team like this before perform at this level ever before. So it just is a great example that if you want to grow a great business and a great team, you don't need what you believe is A plus players. Your A plus players is actually the B plus players, people that aren't the one with the Rolodex of experience and Instagram followers and social media followers. It's actually the people that want to work hard, that are aligned with your core values and really can create a great team. And those are going to become your A plus players. And that is no slag on the individuals I have around me. They're all A players to me, but they're not the A players that people naturally think that should join your team. I think that's what makes a great team and a great business is that Moneyball philosophy. So,
well, yeah. And sometimes you get that A player and it's like, they've already got their way of doing it. They think they know best. They know the way that everybody should do it. And so they're not that moldable character that really fits into the team and is cohesive with the group. So totally understand that. All right. Got a few questions for you, my friend. They're coming. First one, Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore?
Hands down, Caddyshack. I grew up watching that show. Come on, Bill Murray and Rodney Dangerfield. You can't beat those two. For sure.
If you could pick a walk-up song to the first tee box, and I'm saying as of lately to the Waste Management Open, 16th tee box, we'll say, what is the song that you pick?
Juicy by Notorious.
Nice. little glimpse into Curtis there. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. If you could play 18 holes of golf with anyone in the world, past, present, or future, who would it be, where, and why?
You know what? This question is a great question. I mean, there's so many, whether you talk about professional golfers or celebrities or, whoever. I mean, I would love to play with alongside someone like Jordan Spieth. I would probably pick Augusta just for the sake of picking Augusta. I've been to the Masters. I think it's a phenomenal experience. And I would just say, I think he's such a respectful and disciplined individual. I'd love to, I love surrounding myself with great people like that. But, outside of professional golfer, I'd say, I'd love to, maybe golf with Michael Jordan and enjoy a cigar at Bandon Dunes. I've been to Bandon Dunes and they got a nice poker room. I wouldn't mind doing that either. So
better be careful. I think Michael's pretty good at poker.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. I appreciate everything that you've shared with us today about your businesses and everything. Any last piece of advice that you have for the 18 Strong community before we let you go?
I think just, go out and get it. Go out and grip it and rip it like we know how to. And take chances, take risks, surround yourself with great people and create a great community. I mean, look at the 18 Strong community. It's so strong and it takes work and effort, but I'm excited to be part of my own community, but also part of communities like 18 Strong. So, yeah.
Well, we really appreciate it. And we didn't even really touch on the subject too much. We kind of brushed over the fact that, the RAD Roller piece and that you're one of the partners and owners of that. But I just want to say publicly here on the air that, we are very fortunate to have been able to meet up with you guys and become friends with you guys and the support that you guys have provided for the show. And then obviously just, the great products that you're putting out and and the impact that you're having on not just the golfers, but the fitness world in general. You mentioned some of the professional athletes. So just want to say, continue to do what you guys are doing there. We feel that we're very blessed to be a part of that. And so we look forward to this relationship for many, many years to come.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And just a little insight. We got a new product underway, so get ready for it.
Sweet. Can't wait to unleash it to the 18 Strong community.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode with Curtis. If you want any more information on him, you want to check out his full bio. I'm going to link his full bio in the show notes page, or just links to all of his social media, Innovative Fitness, RAD Roller, all of that stuff will be in the show notes link. So go there and you can find all of that information. I also want to mention that Curtis has a great newsletter that he and his buddy just started putting out. It's called Healthy Ambitions. And I'm going to link to that I think it's the third one that they've put out. Link to that. You can subscribe to it there. But basically they provide, snippets of little articles, great articles that have been published, some of their favorite articles or favorite products. It could be something fitness related, nutrition related, health related, business related. But they give you the article, but then they give kind of a brief summary and then their take on it. And I think it's a great way to really kind of stay up to date on some of these newer things that are going on in the health, fitness, and business category. So definitely check that out. It's called Healthy Ambitions. All right. Thank you again for joining us here on the 18 Strong podcast. Again, we didn't mention it before in the show, but if you haven't had a chance to check out our product, the Golf Body Blueprint, it's a full-blown 8-week online training program. It has been working wonders for the people that have gone through. We've had, I don't even know how many people go through this program already, and we've been getting great feedback. We've had some questions on, what equipment you might need. Basically, if you have dumbbells and some rubber bands, you could pretty much do almost anything in the Golf Body Blueprint program. We show you ways to adapt the different exercises if for some reason you don't have the piece of equipment that we use in the instructional video there. So that's golfbodyblueprint.com. If you have any more questions on that, feel free to email me at jeff@18strong, or there's, I believe, a little support tab there on that page, golfbodyblueprint.com. Get you ready for this upcoming golf season. All right, we look forward to catching up with you again next week on the 18 Strong podcast. If you haven't left a rating or review for the show, we would greatly appreciate that on iTunes. And of course, we would love to see you in our Facebook group, the 18 Strong Movement. So be sure to check us out over there. All right, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.